and how I even got into death midwifery. What it is holding vigil in a focused spiritual manner with somebody who's at the end of life. It's not something that I sought. It's something that sought me. And I feel like it's helpful because it widens our eyes about the end of life. And I believe that we need to go deeper with how we approach end of life within our experiences with the people we love and with family and so on. Because I really don't think that our culture has allowed us to be truly equipped for end of life energies. I was very young. I had a NDE, that's called a near death experience. That was what geared me up on the path to work with people who are crossing. That was the beginning. I didn't realize that, obviously I didn't realize, I was a kid. Down the road, I would be working with people or working closely with people who were getting ready to cross. That experience, that moment in time, prepared me to understand that when you're sick and you're dying, it's extraordinarily painful. And that's not anything that would shock or stun anybody, because if you sat by the side of anybody you know who you've lost, they tell you. They're up in your face with it. They'll tell you. They're like morphine now. So they're very clear on the fact that there's physical pain when you're by the side of the person who's crossing. That moment when they've stopped breathing, that moment when their heart has stopped, that is the moment that they are exactly experiencing some form of their transition. I would love to say everybody experiences peace, but I've spoken with other people who've had NDEs, and every single person is unique. And so I can't speak for that. Since I had my experience and I was very lucid, I have a different take on the experience of feeling the pain, a different take on the experience of moving into the transition space. We'll call it, being out of body, in spirit. What, aside from that took me onto that path was, as I was gaining maturity, still in my teen years, my mother became incredibly ill. I was just 18. I was in the middle of the situation where they had told my mother that she was going to cross. And I was already deeply involved in spiritual energies and works and had already had my experience. I already was speaking with spirits, and I was able to see ghosts proficiently. And so there's a lot of things with me that were already on target at the age of 18. And so as my mother was crossing, I embraced the process with her. I stood by her side. I would sit at her feet and offer her healing energy when she was in pain. I would speak with her when she was having doubts or fears. And so it began again there. So like you can see this happened in pieces. Like it began with me, then it began again with my mother. And doing the healing work with my mother inspired me to continue to delve into the healing arts. It was very important to me, just as much as seeing things, doing oracles, making that connection with the beyond, whatever you want to call it. As I continued to expand younger, I was working with chakric work, which is the spinning wheels of energy through the body. And as I became older and started exploring and meeting other healers, I was always interested in what they were doing. When I went to Australia, I met a very beautiful Reiki master. And I'd never encountered a person who could stand away from me, no hands on me, and me feel her touching my soul. And that was so beautiful, I cried. Doctors, acupuncturists, Reiki masters, healers, medicine people, whatever you want to call it, there's gradations of what you'll experience. Everybody's good to some extent. Some people are magnificent. And she was way up there. If you're going to set the bar, and I'll actually mention her name. I don't know where she is in the world. I don't know if she's still with us in the world because I have not seen her since I was in my 20s, but her name was Bertha. And she's the reason why I decided I wanted to learn Reiki. I wanted to study it and become a Reiki master as well because her influence on me was so powerful. So move forward. We're going to fast forward. I'd been working through many different degrees and levels of the healing arts every single year of my life, I was continuing to do the work. I got my Reiki master certification at 35. Well, it didn't go the way I expected it to go, the way I expected it to go is I expected people who had broken limbs and aches and pains and, I don't know, body rashes or what have you, to come to me and get Reiki sessions. And I was excited to be able to offer them really beautiful Reiki sessions. And with already a lot of history behind me, I was able to really help influence extreme peace in people's bodies and very fast healing. And I was excited about that. Well, because again, there's our plan and then there's fate. Fate decided to start me solidly in the energy of death midwifery. And so what happened was people would come to me, not when they were sick and just needed a little bit of healing. They came to me when they were beyond my ability to heal them. And it was happening repeatedly. People would come to me with stage 4 cancer. They would come to me after 2 strokes and 5 heart attacks and a missing leg. I don't know where my leg is. Can you Reiki my leg back on? I'm like, oh gosh, this is challenging. It's their destiny, coming, going, staying. All you can say is you really are incredibly sick. It's likely you won't be able to hold on to the body. We are going to work on all levels until there's a cohesion, a decision. And that's what I do. So when people come to me and they're at the end, I don't go, oh my gosh, you're at the end. Why did you come to me so late? There's nothing I can do for you. I do have a realistic conversation with them. Usually, if we're going back to people who came to me for healings, okay, usually I would sit down and we'd have the consult. They'd tell me what the problem was, and then I would explain to them what I could do for them. I explained to them that we worked as a team, okay, and this is true, that any healer doesn't just come and touch you and now you're healed, okay? You come to the healer, and however open your heart is and whatever that sacred journey is between you and the healer, you walk together. That's how that works. And if you let the healer get deep in there with you, you get the best results. That's always how it's going to be. And if there's some subconscious block that you don't even know about that does not want to continue the fight, the healer won't be able to get beyond that block because you are divine. Nobody gets to decide for you. Nobody. And that's important to remember. You are your own being. So somebody's incredibly ill. I explain to them, you are incredibly ill. I see that. I will do my very best for us to be on target because you didn't come to me to help, to have me help you cross. You came to me hoping I could help you stay. And so we create a bond or a pact, an agreement. And with that bond, pact, and agreement, I'll sit with that person and we'll do the work together and we'll continue to dialogue. Do they feel better? Are they feeling more hopeful? Are they feeling like it's hopeless? Where do they want to move from there? And everybody's different. And what was happening was I was actually sitting vigil to people who were going to cross. That's what was happening. And it was repeating itself. And the day that it finally occurred to me that, and there was no word for it at the time. I never met another death midwife. Most people don't even know about death midwifery unless they're usually alternate spiritual religions, because most people who are of Christian religion or some more popular, well-known religion will sit with their rabbi or their priest and they'll pray with them and do their novenas and such, and that's it. But it's not as intimate or personal as the experience with a death midwife. A death midwife will stay as many days as you need them to. They'll hold vigil, they'll come, they'll be on speed dial, and so on and so forth. So I was called to the bedside of a tango dancer, a very, very beautiful man. And the person who called me to his bedside was convinced I was going to heal him, was just all like, you come in here and heal him. Now, I'd already had, part of my gift is that I am a psychic. Part of my gift is I can see things in the future. I can see things in the past. I can see all kinds of interesting things. I already knew he was going, but that's based on the spirit connection that was already being established between me and him. That's a part of a sacred process that takes place. I come to his bedside. I'm not surprised that he is a skeleton in the bed at 90 pounds. I was like, well, they asked me to be here and I'm going to be my best self. And I sat at his feet and put my hands on his feet and started doing energy work. I was doing energy work about, what do you need from me? Because I'm going to bring whatever you need. We're going to do whatever you need. And that's a intuitive tapping in process. Well, I ended up coming to him repeatedly for 2 weeks. And over the process of 2 weeks, he and I deepened our bond. And by the end of that deepening of the bond, I realized the real calling that was coming up. By the time he did get ready to go, his very last day with me was beautiful. And he spoke about knowing that his soul was eternal and sharing just more heart than I can possibly imagine even speaking about. And I'm actually going to speak on that now. So that's when I realized with him, I realized this is something happening that's part of my fate. I can serve people who are getting ready to cross because of my talents and skills and abilities. For those who choose death midwifery, and I don't know if you guys are sensitive enough to have this experience knowledgeably, but the person who's about to cross leaves you some sort of gift. And he left me an extraordinary gift. And I realized, oh, this is such a sacred process, helping to guide somebody over safely and elegantly, gracefully, beautifully, that they leave you some little inheritance. And it could be anything. Let's say that person was, in his case, a teacher at UCLA, a mathematician who loved and studied sacred geometry and was strongly into it. Well, that's what he gave me. And he gave it to me 24 hours before his death. His angels came to me and told me to do a mandala painting for him. And I let them channel the painting and explain to me what I was doing. And then I came to his bedside and I showed it to him, and he almost fell sideways. But he was amazed. I mean, talk about getting your faith really instilled by the person who comes and shows you your favorite thing. And he's like, explain it to me. What is it? What does it mean? He was passionate about it. And I explained that 47 angels were coming in from all sides, that these radiating bands of light were coming. And he's like, oh, yes, tell me more. And I explained the whole thing to him. And it was after his death, when I was invited to his funeral, they passed out a pamphlet to all of us. And inside of it was all his sacred geometry, all his mandalas. His whole focus had been mandalas. So I do lots of mandalas now, and that was the gift he gave me. I inherited that from him. Moving to the story to open your eyes about the powerful transition that happens when people are about to leave their body. The specific story I'm going to tell you is when I ended up being in the sacred position of holding space for a friend who crossed. My friend's name was Billy, and we had been friends for 15 years. And he was kind of a sacred older brother to me. I went through some really tough times in my 20s and a lot of my 30s as well. And it was a real struggle to be who I was in a world that wasn't really knowing where to put me, and me not knowing where to put me. And so when times were tough, he took very good care of me. He made sure that I was always well and always treated me with decency, respect, and love. And he was a fashion designer and loved to dress me like I was his doll. So he helped me with self-love. He helped me with valuing myself as somebody's muse. He knew that I had gone through this whole process. He knew that I had fought hard. And he knew that I was getting better. And it was at the exact same time that the doctor told him that he should get his affairs in order. And his doctor said, do you need me to call your friends or your family? Do you need me to tell you what to say in consultation with them? And he played the message for me. He came to my house and he played his phone so that I could hear what his doctor said on the phone. And then he said, I know you're a really powerful healer and I have so much faith in you and I want you to help me. And I said, look, Billy, I'm on board for as much as you need, for as long as you need. I'm at your side. And at the time, he was still super vibrant. And all his experience of being sick was that he had a really sore throat and it was very hard to swallow because he had a throat cancer. Over the course of trying to work with him, he was very, I'm going to use the word squirrely, because I wanted him to come to my house to get work done 3 times a week. I was very serious about him getting in and getting the work done. But he was elusive. Now, when you're working with people, you have to remember their sacred process, no matter how frustrating it is for you to experience, is their sacred process. So knowing he had healer on tap with me, that I wasn't going to ask him for money for anything. I was going to sit with him and heal him and heal him and heal him and heal him until I was cross-eyed. Okay? He didn't want to take advantage of that. And there's a part of me that was frustrated with him, and I would call him and be like, you need to get your ass out here. You need to come to my house. I didn't have a car, so I was depending on him to get to me. And he came to me, he got diagnosed in late September, and he came to me once in October and once in November. So roll forward to December, I didn't hear from him at all. And I'd sent him text messages, no response. Roll forward to January, now I'm starting to badger him. What's going on? Where are you? He called me. He was really, 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 really stoned, and he was watching The Mummy. Now, the reason why I'm sharing this with you is because he loved everything Egyptian. It was really inspiring to him. He loved everything Egyptian. And when he was making fashions all the time, he would do that. And his thing with his family is he'd say Egyptian, Egyptian. And it was very sweet. I mean, he was into all of that. He's like, oh, this movie is so cool, and it's The Mummy, and it's so spiritual, and he's stoned, so, he wasn't really completing any sentences, and I really didn't get much insight on it. But it was a really lovely call, and I was giving him some hell about coming to see me. And he, again, did not make an appointment. He told me that he was going to be staying with his aunt, and he went to his aunt's house. Now, we'd already formed a pact because I'd already given him the 2 healings, and we were already bonded on this energy. Again, it's a sacred process. The bonding had already taken place. He was going to be able to reach out to me, even if he wasn't going to be able to use his phone. At the time, I was really into doing Turkish coffee readings. And you take the coffee cup and you flip it over onto a saucer, and then you flip it back, and then you read the grounds. And I'm really good at it, and it's a lot of fun because I get to see all kinds of really cool images. And I was sitting having coffee by myself in the house, and I wanted to give myself a coffee ground reading. And so I flipped the coffee back over, and I'm looking at the cup, and I clearly see Billy. Billy is sideways, he's profile, and there's a big hole in his neck. Big hole. And in front of him is a gravestone. And above him is a butterfly. And I was like, oh, this is serious. So I call his aunt up because I know he's at his aunt's and he hasn't been answering any of my phone calls or any of my text messages. And I call up his aunt's phone number. Isn't it great when your friends give you family context? Keep that in mind, people. Because there could be times when they need to know you're okay, that you're not able to tell them, and family would know better. So that's just FYI. Always try and do that. And he'd done that for me. We were that close. 15 years of friendship. We were very close. And so I called his aunt up and I said, I'm not calling you to scare you. And I know that things are tough and you've been caretaking Billy. But I just did this coffee ground reading for myself, and it was all about Billy. And I wanted to share with you what the image was. And so I said, here's Billy. He's looking toward a gravestone. He's got a giant hole in his neck, and he's got a butterfly over his head. It's very serious. And she said, I'm going to have him call you back. And he calls me back in 20 minutes. Now, this is in February. His voice is super raspy, and I can tell he's struggling to speak. And he says, I'm really sorry I haven't spoken to you, but when my aunt told me what was in the coffee grounds, I wanted you to know what's been happening with me. And he said, I have a very large hole in my neck. And of course, I didn't have the hole in my neck when you last saw me. And it was very worrisome, and I want you to come do work on me. And I said, Billy, you already know I will do everything in my power to do that. I still had no car. So I called one of Billy's other friends, very deeply spiritual, very grounded, very loving, a most wonderful man by the name of Rama. And Rama made the agreement that he and I would go see Billy. So we were tag teaming. And over all the years that Billy had known me and then had met Rama through me, they inspired each other. They were definitely soul brothers. It was a very beautiful thing. So Rama and I make it to Billy's house, and his aunt says, hey, make yourself at home. She brings us water. She's very sweet, incredibly accommodating. And he's laying in bed, and I had not seen him again since November. And this beautiful man who was always the, glowing health was not who was laying in bed. The man laying in bed, I didn't even recognize. He was so skeletal. He was so tiny. He lost all his body weight that his whole face was changed. Even his nose was a different shape because he didn't even have fat in his face. And his hair was a mop on the top of his head because it was like that had kept growing, but everything else had gotten so small. And I was just, it brought me back to Alberto when people are still going, no, he's going to make it. And we're going to fight and he's going to make it. And it brought me back to Alberto where nobody was willing to look at the person in front of them. And so this is the thing that I think families and friends could do better is I understand you're pulling for the person who's not well, but it's important that you don't try and become fantasy oriented when you see them at that state, because they need you to be present to their struggle. They need you to be there for them with the possibility that they won't be there. Instead of saying, oh, you'll be here, we're going to do that later. You need to be present to their vulnerability. I approach him with love and with respect, and I sit down, and he just bursts into tears. He just sees my face and bursts into tears. And so we hold each other for a minute. Then he says to me, of course, I know none of you are going to be shocked about what he says next, can you heal me? And this is what I explained to him. This is how we dialogued. I explained to him, I want you to imagine that this line here is life. And this line here is death. And I said, I want you to imagine that what's in between these two lines is your health. I said, I want to show you where you are so you understand the conversation we're having. And he said, okay. I said, you are here. And he said, oh, uh-huh. And I said, so here's the deal. You can turn around and go all the way back here. You can do that. That's your divine choices. You get to make the choice. I said, but I'm going to be honest. That is a very long journey. That could, for you to be in full and optimal health based on where you're at right now, is going to take every part of you, every ounce of your will, and the walk isn't easy, and you're going to feel sick pretty much the whole way back. And I was speaking from personal experience from being incredibly ill. If you're going to decide you're going to turn back from incredible illness and start walking back toward that line over here, it can take months or years, and you have to be realistic and loving and patient with yourself. You can't be angry if you're suffering. So I explained that to him. I said, and as you can see, since you're right here, it takes the tiniest nudge to topple you over on the other side. And he nodded, he understood, we held hands, we cried with each other again. And I said, okay, now I'm going to work on you. And I did a full sacred ceremony on him. And the full sacred ceremony I did on him, and I explained this to him explicitly, was that whatever was his highest will would be done. If what was really true was he was tired, that he had chosen his end. People choose their end, even if it's an accident, even if it's horrible. We all have divine fate. Never take people's divine fate from them. We're born and we die. We don't get to choose whether our birth is fancy. We don't come out with flowers on our heads and smiling and singing a song and tap dancing. We don't. We come out covered in goop, going, I don't want to be out here. My head hurts because it got squished through a really tiny space. And hi, Mom, I love you. It's scary. Birth is scary. Death is scary. And it's full of surprises, right? Doing the work on him, I was doing the work to be, does he want to do this journey back? Does he have the strength? And if he does, I'm going to be there for him every step of the way. I'm going to be there for him even if he doesn't call me. We're going to be connected, and I'm going to help him regain whatever he can. We're going to do this hand in hand. I'm going to give him as many tools as possible. But if what he's really doing is he's tired and he feels like he's done as much as he can, and he's about to exit, that he can do so with a state of grace, with a state of strength, and not to feel afraid, because feeling fearful as you get closer and closer to the end is a horrible experience. It's isolating. You feel like nobody can understand how scared you are. And again, when I say that every death is a snowflake, I really do mean it. Every death is so unique that no matter what I'm saying about Billy's experience, and even this to open your eyes about the divine process, everybody's going to be different, and it's okay. There's no good or bad way ever when it comes to fate, when it comes to birth, which is everybody's destiny, and eventually the shedding of skin, which is everybody's destiny. And here's the thing, even if we could choose to be eternal, I'm sure at some point we'd be like, you know what, I want to trade this one in for something else, and we'd still decide to exit and do something new or transform in space. Maybe we'll get to that place where one day we can just choose another form without actually losing that consciousness in between steps. I'm not saying, because I believe every imaginable concept is out there possible. Did the work with him. It was really beautiful. I was so grateful to be there. I felt incredibly honored to be there. And this brings me to the part that is to open your eyes, to help you get deeper when you've lost somebody or you're losing somebody, or you might be going. the connection, the truth, the fact that your soul doesn't die, the fact that your body, let's be really honest here, doesn't die. And I'm going to talk about that after I'm done with Billy. I'm going to explain what that means so that you're not like, what do you mean? Come on. After doing the work on him, I left. I had a feeling it would be the last time I saw him. I was hoping I was wrong. It was the last time I saw him in his body. Let's see, that was February. He crossed on Easter. So from February to Easter, he and I were psychically bonded. We were connected at that distance. He was about, again, 3 hours away. He was, a couple 100 miles away. And what was happening was I adopted his schedule. I didn't know I was adopting his schedule, by the way. I did not know until it got closer to that time and I found out from his aunt. But I couldn't sleep anymore. I was up all night long until 6 a.m. And then at 6 exactly, I was finally tired and I would sleep from 6 to noon and then I would start again. And that was exactly his cycle from the day I left to the day he died, was that he was so afraid he would die in the middle of the night that he wouldn't go to sleep. He would force himself to stay awake. And so I was with him because we were connected in that. To walk that walk with him, even at a distance, meant that I needed to be really aware and awake and functioning when he was. And I needed to be asleep when he was. And I didn't realize that that was happening, obviously. I just knew that my whole schedule had changed and I was doing a lot of energy work. And I knew that I was feeling him whenever he was having any kind of trouble. Very shortly before he died, about, I would say 2 weeks before his death, he came to me. And I went to the bedroom and I laid down. And when I laid down and closed my eyes, Billy was with me. And he said he was tired and he wanted to go and he wanted me to walk him to the door. When I'm working with people who are sick or working with people who need healing, I do sacred singing, which means I channel a song to them. I channel their own song to them. I let whatever's meant to come through. I usually start with a mantra. Usually a Hindu mantra, but I have many different songs that I've inherited through the healers I've known who've loved me enough to share their wisdoms. And I'll start with that, and then I'll let that flow into their song. And so when he came to me and he said he was tired, I decided to sing him over. I sang to him. He and I moved closer and closer and closer to the threshold of him crossing. And he was just floating toward it, like gracefully, with so much trust. And right when he got to the edge of that threshold, if you can imagine it being the threshold of a door, right when he got to the actual threshold of the door, he grabbed my arm and he said, "I'm scared." And I said, I understand you're scared. It's going to be okay. And he's like, "I'm scared. Will you go just a little way with me? Just a tiny bit with me?" I said, "Billy, you can't do that. I can't go over the threshold with you." And he said, well, you've done it before, which I thought was really amazing and sweet and kind of freaking adorable. That he's all like, but you've died a little. You've died a little and you're still here with the living. Just go a little way with me. I just want to feel like you walked me in the door like kindergarten, like walked me in before you went and drove back to your job. And I went, Billy, no. I said, you don't understand. It's so compelling, that side. It's so powerful. It would be a fight. I might get sick. I might have to fight to get back into my body. I might not want to get back into my body. I said, you're going to have to trust me and do this on your own. You're going to have faith and go on your own. Now, while we were having the conversation, we had slipped all the way back. Like, imagine the threshold was the space of 15 feet. Now we're 15 feet away. 15 high. Oh, we're way back here. We're way away from the door. And I look and I go, oh, and Billy goes, oh, I'm sorry. Will you do it again? I said, yeah, Billy, I'll totally do it again. And so I take a breath and I start to sing his song for him. And again, he's moving toward that threshold and it's graceful and it's sincere and it's sweet and it's beautiful. And he's getting right to that threshold. And he gets right there, grabs me by the arm. I'm scared. And I was like, oh no. I said, I know, I understand. You're going to have to just go over on your own. It's going to be fine. He goes, Guinevere, just go a little way with me. Just a little way. He goes, I have faith in you. You're really powerful. And I went, Well, that's really sweet. And flattery will get you almost everywhere with me, but no. No. And of course, now we're back again. We're like 15 feet back. And I was just like, oh, geez, he's working me. Like we're doing this work together, and he's having to face these fears. So he looks at me and he's all sad and he goes, I'm sorry. I was just really scared. Will you try again? Of course I'll try again. And so I began to sing, and I began to sing with richness and depth and beauty and rattling into his soul and maybe into his dimensions and his lifetimes. And just like, I'm like, you can do this, Billy. You can do this. This is not death. This is not death. It's a graduation. And we get all the way to the threshold and he grabs my arm and he goes, I can't do it. And I went, oh, Billy, it's okay. And he goes, you're not mad at me? I said, why would I be mad at you? I'm not trying to force you to die. I'm not trying to make you go, You came to me and said you were tired. And I'm here to help you with whatever it is that you desire. I'm here to serve your best interests. And he went, oh, thank goodness, because I thought you'd be so mad at me for coming here and asking and then not going. And I said, Billy, I could never be mad at you. This is us. This is how it goes. This is love. This is connection. And he said, oh, okay, well, I'm tired, but I'm not ready. And I said, look, it's fine. I'm with you. Remember, I'm with you. It's going to be fine. And he said, okay. And that was it. Vision over. He was gone. And of course I'm exhausted. So I go to bed, wake up around noon, and I call up his aunt. And of course I say these creepy words when she answers the phone. I go, I have a really uncomfortable question for you. Is Billy still with us? Because I didn't know whether or not he'd snuck out, like I'd fallen asleep and he decided to go. And she's like, well, yes, he's still with us. Why in the world would you ask me that kind of question? And I said, well, I had this experience this morning and I just thought that maybe he'd gone and I just wanted to make sure he was still with us and wanted to make sure you were also okay. And she said to me, well, yeah, he's still with us, but he was having incredibly powerful hallucinations this morning. And I said, do you know what time? And she said, yeah, it was at 6 a.m. He was having a conversation. And he was like, he was having a conversation. And she goes, yeah. And I said, I think he was having a conversation with me. I said, I'll tell you what happened. I told her the entire story, didn't leave out any of the details. And she lost her mind on the phone with me. Oh my God, he wasn't hallucinating. And I said, what do you mean? She goes, I only heard his side of the conversation. And every word you said he said to you was every word I was hearing him say, but I didn't know who he was talking to. All I know is he was saying, please try again, go with me a little way, you've done it before, you're really powerful, I have faith in you. She'd only heard that side of things. She hadn't heard me singing the sacred songs and explaining to him that it was going to be okay. She hadn't heard that side until I called. He and I, in that sacred process, that sacred bond, we were in spirit realm doing the work that was to lead to his crossing. And for his aunt, as a witness of that experience, she realized it wasn't a hallucination. And I know that a lot of people who are losing people they love hear those people say really weird things. Well, what you have to understand is it may be disjointed. They may say that they see a bowler hat. It may be because they're remembering something. And that's the only thing they can get out of their mouth is that the chair is a giant bowler hat. But a lot of the times they're actually dialoguing with angels and guides. So you're witnessing them have conversations with people who've crossed, with angels, and in this case, with a psychic who had crossed herself for a little bit of time. This was life affirming for his aunt. It was also something that she was able to share with him because she was his bedside partner, to let him know that he'd actually met up with me and spent this whole experience having a ceremony and a ritual that morning. And that helped, I believe, him, because I didn't get to talk to him on the phone. He could no longer speak. Understand that there was less to be afraid of because he'd had the experience. He was the one speaking to me and having the experience, having the vision with me. So now we fast forward to, it was about a week before his death. And at that point, I was very aware of the fact that we were having constant psychic conversation between the two of us. And I was, in fact, acting as his death midwife. And that I was going to be with him to the very end, even though I wasn't actually sitting bedside, which is a beautiful thing because he was incredibly meaningful to me and still is, obviously. And I contacted him psychically because I knew he wasn't going to answer the phone. I knew that his aunt wasn't going to answer the phone. Everything at his house was chaos and everybody was in grieving and mourning and panic and denial. Denial is a big one. So when you're a death midwife or you get into death midwifery, family is really the hardest part. Working with the person who's crossing is not the hardest part. It's family. Family will be arguing. Family will be scared. Family will be evasive. And so it can be really, it's one of the reasons why most people I actually recommend you getting a death midwife, because they're your strongest ally. At the very end, they'll hold space for you in a safe manner and even get your affairs in order if you need. Not just spiritually being there, but even helping you make plans. And a lot of people go into such deep denial with their families that they leave no plan. And when you leave no plan, it's incredibly messy. I mean, even years after his death, his aunt didn't know what to do with his car because no title on death and, just crazy. But anyway, so going back to Billy, it was a week before his death. And, while he was alive, we always spoke about spiritual events and spiritual energy and ceremony and all this other kind of stuff. And I sent him a message. I called him up on the psychic phone and I said, "Hey, Billy, here's an idea. Since I know you're tired and you're not ready to go, but I'm going to share an idea with you. The ideal day to cross at this time is Easter. And the reason why Easter is the ideal day is because you're going to ride a wave. And riding a wave out is bliss and thrilling." And I said, basically what's taking place is, as you already know, there's many Christians of many different levels of the faith all celebrating Christ's resurrection. And I said, that's a really powerful energy, a rebirth from the tomb. And, when you die, it's another form of a birth. Okay, so we'll have all these people are going to be focused on the energy of this. And then we go into the pagan communities that celebrate this holiday as well with spring. It's spring equinox. It's really beautiful. It's all this springtime energy. And so I said to him, that would be ideal if you decided you wanted to move through and do this work there. I said, because you'll ride the wave. It will be a big, huge thrill. It'll be like, Disneyland. It'll be like a big ride. And so I said, I recommend it because people will be praying, people will be in church, people will be doing their spiritual work, and you can benefit from it, and it will be a beautiful experience for your transition. Man, does he know how to take some advice. So he's stubborn. And the reason why I'm saying it in present tense is because, of course he's still alive. He just doesn't have his body anymore. But his stubbornness meant that he decided he would leave on Easter, but like Pacific Standard Time, 5 minutes before midnight. I mean, he listened to me for sure. Well, my experience, because I'd been his death midwife the whole time, was 5 minutes before midnight, I was suddenly tired. And I thought, oh my gosh, is it possible? And so I head to the bedroom, I get in bed, I pull my blankets up, I close my eyes, and my eyes are barely closed, and he's in the room with me. Now, the thing that makes it amazing about him being in the room with me is he's dressed from head to toe in a full-on pharaoh outfit. Now let's go back to the fact that he was a fashion designer. Let's go back to the fact that his favorite thing was the Egyptian culture, the Egyptian. When he was a little kid, he called them Egyptians, right? And he's in this full-on pharaoh costume. And he's magically, because of course I'm in a vision with him, even though he's in the room with me, we're in this really vivid vision. I don't know how to describe it because being a psychic is a very weird thing. I can experience powerful visions, eyes open or eyes closed, and be like, this is real. Wow. Okay. He looks amazing. It looks like, spent $1 million on the outfit. And I'm dressed like a Egyptian high priestess. I'm like, he really dressed me up. And in front of him was an angel. And the angel was a beautiful angel. And he has his hands on the angel's hips. And he goes, Conga! And he's doing this conga line with me, and he's laughing, and he's filled with joy and bliss. And he's just explosive with happiness. And I actually say out loud, I go, oh my gosh, Billy, did you die? Because you seem like really blissed out. And this whole time I've been working with you, you've been tired, a little bit scared, and a little bit sad. But right now you're not. Right now you're excited and blissed out and passionate, and there's an angel with you. And he didn't really answer. He just faded out. I left my phone on for the night because I didn't know if his aunt would call me and say he just passed, he just went right now. I didn't know. And she didn't. I ended up falling asleep and I slept like the dead. Play on words. The next morning around 10 a.m., I called his aunt and I said, I'm just doing a check-in. And she explained to me that he had died 5 minutes before midnight, that they'd all been by his side. He shared that with me. Now, the fun thing is, what the gift he gave me was? He's a costume designer. This guy, gave me this crazy cleverness. I can make things I never used to be able to make before, really exquisite pieces. So thank you for that, Billy. This is why your body is eternal. Okay, your body is eternal. not just your soul, your body is too, because your breath was lent to you by the wind. Your body was lent to you by the minerals of this planet. Your blood was lent to you by the water. When you die and you break apart, when you come apart, you go back. And when you go back, you're not dead. Do you understand that the physical body sang into this form, this lifetime, is part of the story of the earth? You can touch a tree. You can drink water. And this was all in form at some time. It's full of wisdom. It's full of the eternal knowledge of each person who walked. The dust under your feet was bodies, form, maybe shellfish, maybe an octopus, maybe a person who lived 1,000,000 years ago is the fertile dirt that the plants live and thrive from. You don't cease, you just transform. Your body goes back to the earth and continues to live in multiple forms, constantly nourishing microorganisms and macroorganisms, and continues to be them. When you eat a chicken, you have eaten the flesh of what was once alive, and that is why you're living. That chicken lives in you. Perhaps be mindful about what you're eating, whether it's a celery that remembers the dream of being part of a stalk and part of the earth, and now it's your dream. It's your life. Its life becomes your life. And this is perpetual. It's continual on all levels. We're constantly drinking water. We're constantly needing nourishment in the physical form. And it continues to be shared, transformed, and it's just eternal. It's like a star seed. You spread your seeds across eternity, across the land, and it becomes mountains and trees and fish and whatever. And I just want you to keep that in mind, because it's kind of beautiful to know your soul has its own arc, its own journey and graduation. But your body becomes earth, air, and water again. The only reason why I didn't say fire is because I believe your spirit is the fire. Anyway, I love you guys. Stay strong in your heart. And there is science involved with that body thing, the biosphere. It continues to recreate itself eternally. Even if all the humans on this planet were gone, even if all the animals on this planet were gone, this planet is still alive. And even if this planet was gone, no longer alive, this planet will still be hurtling through space, sending its energy out to other places. It would be a meteor hitting another planet and perhaps seeding minerals there and transforming life there. It just never ends. Try and wrap your mind around infinity and what is eternal and live your best life. If you're doing death midwifery and you're not, in a Christian pantheon on things, work with Hecate. You might find that to be incredibly helpful because she is beautiful and she shines the light and she guides. And if you know somebody who is in fact crossing, or you think they might be, don't lose the opportunity to be lovingly by their side. Sure, it's scary. Hecate is considered a triple goddess from the Greek pantheon. She's a goddess of birth, she's a goddess of prophecy, and she's a goddess of death. She's a triple goddess, maiden, mother, and crone. They say she has, a goddess of the gateways. And when you think about death midwifery, she falls under that concept because she's a midwife. She's actually known to be there to bless children as they're born, but she's also there as people are in hospice. She's there at the beginning, the middle, and the end. Now, the reason why I wanted to bring her up is she has this horrible bad rap. People always just basically equate her with her crone aspect, the end of time aspect of her. And in all her depictions in Greek mythology, she's always depicted as very beautiful and shining with light, which makes sense because when you consider her sacred duty of being a goddess of doorways and of pathways, then she holds all of that in her, and being a bright and shining light is her way to guide. And she's a goddess of fortune and like seeing the future and these kinds of things. She was equals with Zeus. She never lost her gift. And the thing I think is amazing in her story is, if you remember the story of Hades brought Persephone into the underworld. Demeter didn't know where Persephone was. So Demeter went to Hecate because Hecate was a goddess of predicting things, of seeing, past, present, future, seeing in between worlds, in between the veils. And so she went to Hecate and she said, "Can you find my daughter?" And Hecate saw that she was with Hades. So that's how Demeter even knew to go go rescue her daughter down there. Well, the thing I think is interesting is Hecate became the guide, the actual, I'm going to use the term midwife, but really kind of like the wise woman to Persephone, the goddess of spring. So this goddess that's perceived as just sweet and kind of, adorable, actually had one of the most badass goddesses as her guide. And Hades and Zeus equally loved Hecate. Everybody loved her. She basically had carte blanche. So if you're working with that kind of stuff, Hecate is a goddess of magic and a goddess of doorways, pathways, of the possible and the impossible, of the beginning, the middle, and the end. And I love you all. Okay? So now I'm going. Bye-bye.